Today, I am here with a couple of local doulas in the Fort Worth and Dallas area. We are going to be talking about how to navigate the emotions and the things that happen and come along with your birth not going the way it was planned. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. My name is Misty Gigler, and I'm a birth doula. I have been for 5 years. I supporting women in childbirth and postpartum period is my passion. My sister has experienced a pretty traumatic birth before I was a doula, and I've also had a home birth and a hospital birth. So I've those three, you know, experiences really led me to becoming a doula. So it's really my passion just to help women because there's not enough support out there for them.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Yep. I'm Emily. I am a postpartum doula, also trained as a birth doula, but I mostly work in postpartum in the DFW area. My passions definitely are in postpartum planning, and I've just been in so many situations where I, was like, oh, like if there was more education out there, so many of these like situations could be prevented. So I feel very passionate about that factor, which is I feel like what led me here to talk about this, because that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today.
Yes,
So
absolutely. So we know that, planning for your birth and the birth that you want is very important. I feel like as doulas, we all kind of advocate for that. But we also know that, birth can sometimes go off plan. It can, things happen, emergency situations happen, or just the need for intervention does arise. And so, my goal in this is just to talk about how the things that we can do and the things that we see that are done that help these families through the transition and through coping and just processing when things don't go the way that they're planned to. So I want to start by um, are there any like prep work things that you guys do or that you have seen done that really help moms and families navigate the experience?
Right. So when I have my mom's making birth plans, I like to have a like three different, scenarios. I like to have a if you do need a C-section, if something does happen where it's an emergency, I like to have a plan for that, a plan for an epidural, and just put those aside. We've already discussed, planned on what their wishes are, and we just set those aside. So that's already done. And then we get to focus on if they do want natural childbirth and all of that. One thing I really like to do during the process when they are in the hospital is if a situation does arise, if it's not emergency, I really like to just say, hey, let's take 10 minutes to discuss what's going on, to educate the parents, and then let them make that decision and feel confident about what's about to happen. Because what I see sometimes is, the OB will come in and say, we're going to do this, this, and this, and it's very fast. And your brain doesn't have time to process it, and things are happening before you actually realize it. And after the fact, it's emotional and, it didn't go the way you wanted. And I also encourage moms to be open. And I, tell them every birth is different. And, things do happen, but there are ways to handle those and be empowered in those decisions and feel confident. So you don't feel rushed into anything, unless it is an emergency, of course.
Of course. Yes. No, I love that. So, Emily, do you have anything? I know you work mostly with postpartum mamas, but is there anything that you have seen that you like encourage people to have those conversations ahead of time?
yeah, and I think my perspective might be a little bit different because working postpartum, people don't usually need help postpartum, and so I usually get hired after the birth. And definitely a lot of birth processing conversations take place.
Yeah.
And so like the preparing side, I think I see a need for it more than I actually am able to be that, like, fulfill that need for people. Um, but the times that I have worked prenatally with families, I totally agree that it's just like talking about all the possibilities, and not in a way of like scaring people or anything like that, but just that birth is a force of its own. Um, and we cannot like force it to go any way. Um, things can be perfectly smooth up until one point something might happen, and like that's just kind of the reality of it. So yeah, I think just kind of sprinkling in conversations prenatally, um, that are just helping to like plan realistically for what birth can be like. But then also I'm like a huge proponent of also being like, oh, but it can be so dreamy, let's set up
Mhm.
the birth space, and let's go around the house and set up little spots where we can labor and do that, but then like kind of sprinkle in those like moments of like packing the hospital bag or something like that. To not where it feels overwhelming, like this is so unpredictable, we don't know what's going to happen, but just having both sides of it can be so dreamy, but let's also have the realistic side and kind of make them go good together.
So, as birth workers, I'm sure you have both either been like, present when a birth doesn't go the way it's planned, or maybe you experienced it yourself, or seeing a mom immediately afterwards. What are some things that you can see done in the midst of all of that that can really make or break that perceived trauma that happens whenever things don't go the way they're planned?
I really like to talk beforehand about what their particular anxieties are, um, about birth, right? Um, and I find that you can really educate at the same time and lessen those anxieties so that when they do arise, you don't feel like you're doing something wrong. That's a big thing. And support. And you can have a C-section and it be a wonderful birth. It's not the end of the world, right? It's you can make it beautiful. And there are so many options that people don't even know that you can do with C-sections, that are available to them. Um, so I really like to encourage people to not think that a C-section is the end of the world, if they do get into that situation. Um,
Good.
I think as far as like lessening the trauma, kind of going off what you were saying, Misty, like if it is a C-section and it wasn't a planned C-section and it is a traumatic event, it's, asking the questions, what can we do postpartum? Okay, like we might make a special belly salve that we're gonna put on, um, and maybe like wrap the belly and really honor the fact that that happened. That might help the trauma kind of come more to a closure so that it doesn't carry into then parent, and it doesn't carry into breastfeeding or whatever it um, is really kind of like almost like making like a ceremony out of letting that trauma close and finish off and recognizing that it happened and that it was really hard, um, but just doing special things, and yeah, I feel like that really helps and then also having good postpartum care, even if you're in the hospital, the nurses who are coming in and things of that sort, making sure that we're not furthering the trauma. We're gonna be really gentle to this parent who just experienced something really difficult. They might not be coming out of birth feeling like, oh, I have this new baby and it's so amazing. Some people do, and that's fine too. But moms who had a traumatic birth probably aren't feeling all that super excited about what just happened. And so I think the care that is being given to them, to lessen that trauma needs to be a lot more gentle, probably a lot more hands off, a lot more you tell me what you need. Um, I think they probably need stronger boundaries with the people around them, because they might be in a little bit of like a self protective mode. So just being really, really, really aware um, of the people who have like, had traumatic births, being aware of their needs and their experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Also,
love that you mentioned like the postpartum nurses and how their care can really, they can, if it's good intentional care, then it definitely can help, bring things to a close. And, while the
Yeah.
birth was not the way we wanted it to go, maybe postpartum, can be much more blissful.
I'd
And
like to say, can I say
yes,
one more thing?
absolutely.
One thing I think, if you have an OB, we have to realize that they don't even see the doctor, for 6 weeks, right? And so there's so much that goes on in those 6 weeks with your
Yeah.
hormones, with depression and anxieties, and working, processing the birth, that kind of gets skipped if you don't have a postpartum doula or a doula. And I think that that is something we are really missing in the healthcare and mental health care of women that have given birth, even if it was an amazing birth, right? We still need to process it and honor it, right?
Yes,
I totally agree.
absolutely.
I think that there, in that aspect, there's way too much room for error. Um,
Right.
there's too much room for things to happen. Um, and I think that community postpartum care needs to be a lot more normalized, because it might not even be fair per se, for lack of a better word, to put that responsibility on OBs. Let's take some of that responsibility and spread it around the community and take better care of postpartum people ourselves. If they're not going to do it, let's take on that responsibility and see what we can do about it. Because I
Yes.
Or
totally
have
agree. It's too long.
OBs have postpartum doulas on staff, if
Hmm.
their
Yeah.
clients do need that. Um,
I love
Definitely.
that idea, actually. I think that's a phenomenal idea.
Yeah. So, or even someone to just go check, like go make a couple rounds. I don't know, and just go check on the people. Like, are you okay? Because some moms will be like, absolutely not. Like, they're at their wits end. I'm not okay. Okay, what can we do?
I was just going to say that in-person visit can really tell you a lot. Over the
Hmm.
phone, they may be like, I'm great. And then you get there and the husband is exhausted trying to take care of the mom and the baby. And the mom may not be doing great mentally or physically, but just doesn't want to, say that,
Mhm.
So I think that in-person interaction and making sure breastfeeding is going okay, if they need any tips, all of that in person is so important.
Yes,
Yeah, I
very
agree.
much. I do know that since the City Moon has started our journey, we have been in contact with a lot of OB offices, and it does seem like the majority of the ones that we've connected with, that they want to improve their postpartum care. I think there's a missing piece of how do we do that. I know insurance does make things difficult for them, and but I know that the desire is there to improve it. So hopefully we will start seeing some improvement in that area specifically. I know out of hospital birth settings definitely tend to have better postpartum care,
Yeah.
um, but I'm very happy to say that I have seen a shift in the OB offices and the in hospital providers wanting to see an improvement in that area as well. So speaking of the postpartum period, other than obviously more follow up and follow through with providers, because that's definitely a key aspect. But are there other things that you see as being helpful to moms? Are there things that you as the doula can go in and do, or things that you see the family doing that's helpful to that mom and that family to process things?
I find
Uh,
that having a family bringing food over, having that plan of not having to worry about that, not staying, right? We want to
Mhm.
give the family that, we
Yes.
don't want to do any entertaining, you know, and having that mom be pampered as much as possible and letting her have time to lay there in the bed with her baby and take care of herself as well as the baby, because that's the biggest struggle. Some moms are all about the baby and ignore themselves. And I really like to encourage them to remember themselves, right? Because if they aren't healthy, they can't take care of their babies as good, right? So, also, just things like padsicles and things that we can provide to give them comfort going through that period, processing the birth. And some clients, if they allow me, I really like to take pictures of their partners together during labor to get those special moments. Even if it turns out a different way, you still have captured those beautiful moments during labor that are so special.
I love the picture idea. I would have not thought about that. That's a beautiful idea.
Yeah, that is a good idea. Um, I have found that birth processing now, again, my perspective might be a little bit different because with my clients, I'm typically not at their birth, so it's a little different going into the postpartum experience. It's different because I wasn't there, and so my take generally on it is to wait until the topic comes up, because it can be, for some people, it is a traumatic thing, and I usually wait until it comes up because I don't want to walk in and just be like, "So how was your birth?" It might not be the right time, the right space for them to bring that up. And so I kind of just wait until that relationship is built and they realize, okay, this doula is a safe person and maybe can even help me through this. And so then, we'll kind of naturally process it as it comes up. Um, and I think honestly, just listening to it and even just validating, like, yeah, like that was not cool that that doctor did that, or it wasn't cool that, that happened. And I'm sorry, your plan didn't go as you wanted it to. And just really validating and not putting any like meaning to it, but just listening and validating everything that the birthing person is saying. Um, One of the other services that I offer with my business is vaginal steaming. And so it's like a holistic, um, basically you steam a pot of herbs, and then the person after giving birth can sit over that pot and let the oils from the herbs kind of come back into the womb space. And that in itself is like the perfect time for sharing the birth experience, because it's usually the first time that piece is getting any attention since birthing a baby. Usually it's just kind of like the baby comes out and then, we don't even look at that for 6 weeks, but it's like a big thing just happened. Let's care for ourselves, right? And offer some kind of um, healing properties for our bodies to repair. So that's a good time too. It's just finding the right time and space, because it is a huge thing to take your mind and your body back to that experience, and walk through it again. So
And I feel like the womb steaming, the vaginal steaming, that definitely goes back to that closure piece, right? Because
hmm
you're kind of finishing up that and sharing that story. And, then once it's out on the table and we've processed it and we're moving on from the birth to the postpartum. And so that's
yes,
beautiful. I really like that idea. I also, like you said, about listening to them and validating what they're saying and not really putting any intention in your words. And so you're not trying to help them through it. You're just hearing it.
yeah,
And that in
yeah,
itself can be so therapeutic for moms because, it's not your story, right? It's theirs. So you're just listening. You don't have to say
hmm
anything. You don't have to give any advice because that's not what they're seeking, right? They're just seeking understanding.
exactly. And
And
it's
so,
such a privilege and such an honor to go into to even be the one that's holding that story for that person. Like, that
mhm.
is such a privilege and such a sacred space. Like, it is not my job at all to walk into that and offer some kind of opinion or on the opinion on their doctor or opinion on this person or that person. um it's just like, you as the person who's in the support role has to recognize their that they have no, like, oh gosh, what's the right word? I feel like my words are failing me today. They have no
Putting
like,
them together very beautifully.
well, thank you. Um, it's probably being the trapped in the house with the snow and the ice. It's like apocalyptic. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I guess the support person is just, you don't really have a job in that sense. But I think people who are postpartum support people might feel like they need to do a lot of things, especially when the postpartum person is like in a more struggle kind of space. Naturally, we want to help and we're like, oh, we want to do all these things to help this person, but that's not what they need. They really just need you to be there and listen. And then, if they need help, generally they'll ask.
Yeah.
Um,
Go
So,
ahead,
so
Misty.
many, so many people will just tell moms, "Oh, you have a healthy baby, so it doesn't matter,"
yeah.
and it totally dismisses their, physical pain, emotional trauma, and even if they have a great birth, they may have breastfeeding issues
Mm.
that are stressing them out. That's a whole nother issue, that they really need support with, because sometimes it can get painful and you do want to give up and you don't know how to fix it, right? So that's important as well.
Yeah, I totally
Definitely.
agree.
I think it's important that we do look at, it's not just the birth, it can be the things afterwards. All of those
Exactly.
things definitely play a role in it. Do you ever see things that families kind of naturally do or they do on their own? It's not because their provider told them to do it or their doula told them to do it, but things that you see them do that seem to help them, like with their coping and with their processing.
Hmm.
I think that keeping family away for a few weeks, and having not so many visitors, um, it seemed to help. And I tell my clients nowadays, oh, just blame it on COVID, so they have that excuse, right?
Yes.
Because I think that, the partner and the mom need that time and space to get in the swing of things and get into a routine and being a parent, especially for the first time. And, we don't want all of those fears to go into their next birth, you know? Um, but yeah, the food definitely is a big, big thing. So they don't have to worry about that. Um, some moms get scared when their partner leaves to go to the store, to get food. So, um, yeah.
I
Yeah.
love, 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 love the recommendation for having some time to just yourselves. I think that whenever we have moms, any moms that experience birth, but especially, whenever it's a traumatic birth, as the family and as a support team, sometimes people kind of want to overdo it and they don't give moms the space to just get the rest that she needs because that's so incredibly important. But also, to just be with her baby and just kind of, live in the moment of the postpartum, right? That the cuddling and the learning the breastfeeding, and not to mention it's hard to pick up on the feeding cues and to be comfortable walking around with your breast out because in the first couple of days, let's face it, it's kind of what it looks like. And
Hmm.
so I love that you said that because that's very, very important. And I think that I wish society would sometimes get that of maybe give them a couple weeks before you know, are right there trying to be in the home, bring them meals, leave them at the door, and move on about your
Yeah,
way.
because those
Yeah.
partners really need that skin to skin
Mhm.
contact as well. So
Yes.
I really try to tell them to do that. It not only gives mom a break, but it gets that bonding with the partner that is so magical, and it makes them feel part of the process, right? And they get to go through their emotions, so that's important as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think in families like processing like you were saying, Kayla, with like the like how do families usually like process it themselves,
Mm.
or how do they help themselves as like a unit in those times? I think it's incredibly important to realize that the partner might also have trauma from the birth, and that they were also there, and that their experience also matters. And so they might be helping each other by just, looking at each other being like, oh my God, like that was crazy, but we did that together. And it's definitely something that can make their relationship stronger. It can also impact the relationship negatively. So it's really just such like a like sensitive period of time, and they really just need like all the support they can get, the helpful support. Support is like, in my brain, such a specific kind of care, because support is not coming in and being like, oh, like you're, like you said, you're fine, your baby's healthy. Like that's not support. I feel like that's the opposite of support. But yeah, the partners, I really see families helping each other by just looking at each other and being like, that was really hard, but like we did it and we're okay. And yeah, I don't really see families doing anything like super like big or like monumental together, other than just experiencing all of it together, and just like just being with each other and being like, this is nuts. It's probably one of the biggest stressors or changes the relationship has ever had, right? Especially first time parents. So it's a huge thing for them, and they've probably never had to cope with something like this before, typically. And so support doesn't always, when they're supporting each other, it doesn't always look like, cooking or something like that. Sometimes it's just them being present with each other.
Yes.
And that really, I feel like that strengthens and solidifies that that family the family unit. In those first couple of days, just being together and experiencing this change and this joy that comes with having a new baby. But to just have time to do that together is so important, and it's unfortunately not really, it's not something that a lot of families get. So I love, that that's a topic that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Another thing, like if the partner has the ability to stay home from work for even a few weeks, I think it's really important, if the mom is breastfeeding, to have that partner get up and help, because sometimes it can be really lonely, right? Getting up in the middle of the night and being by yourself night after night and not getting enough sleep. If you don't feel alone in that space every single time, it can really help, even if he's just, they're just sitting there talking with you, right? So you aren't falling asleep in the chair while you're nursing and wake up 3 hours later,
Yes,
so I really
absolutely.
encourage that as well.
Yeah, no, I love whenever I am, planning things with moms, is because I focus a lot in the postpartum as well, obviously. But if partner can't be home, then having some kind of support person, but a support person that they don't feel a need to cater to. So,
Right.
Hiring a doula is always, if it's possible, like that is always my number one recommendation, because you don't feel like you have to get up and clean for this person to come in, or cook for this person, or entertain this person with conversation. You can just be yourself, and she's going to do what she needs to do. But if you have a good relationship with a mom and you're comfortable with that, that's always lovely. A sister, somebody that you are just completely comfortable with, and that's only really something that I recommend if partner can't be there, because having somebody there is important, but it needs to be somebody that, you have that connection with, and that comfort that, you don't mind breastfeeding in front of them, or looking, like everything is falling apart, because you're going to have rough moments, and, that's just part of it. So
yeah, I totally agree. That's something I tell my clients, but like before my first visit, I'm like, I'm expecting to come to a house where it's dirty and there's dishes and there's food and there's laundry. That's what I'm expecting. I'm also expecting you to not be showered and to possibly be partially naked. Okay, I'm a doula. I've seen boobs. I've seen it all. Okay. And so, but I get it that at first it's so foreign to people, especially again, if they're a first time mom, they're like not used to being in such a vulnerable state. So I think just letting them know, like, it's okay, I'm used to this, like, I'm comfortable with all of this, like, please don't try to, get yourself all up, and don't get your house all up for me. That's literally what I'm here to do, to support you. And I've had, like, right now I have a client who, she has a good friend who is literally coming overnight. She has twins, to help her with her twins. And I'm like, what an amazing friend. That is support. If everybody could have someone on their team who walks in with, you know, arms full of food, nourishing foods,
Yes.
and is like, go get some sleep. I'm going to stay here overnight. I know that's not doable for everybody, but just like having that support
Yeah.
helps so much.
That's amazing. I love
Yeah.
that.
And the
Yeah, it's great.
military, the military TRICARE just, approved doulas, and postpartum doulas are huge for military families. If their partner is deployed and they live somewhere where they don't have any family, and they might have just gotten transferred there and don't have any friends, like that is huge.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I'm hoping that just snowballs right into all insurance and make it covered and make it be available for everyone, because not everyone has the money, right? So I really hope that every woman can have that type of care.
Yeah. And I know in the doula community, the talk about insurance has been going on for as long as I can remember. And it's not always the best, like, I mean, it's a process that takes so long. And so I've seen a lot of doulas like going and creating like nonprofits. And now we have, what is that website called? Be Her Village, where you can basically create a baby registry, but it's like for services like doula services or lactation services. And so you're like basically have a baby registry for things like that, instead of like clothes and stuff like that. So I think that
That's really neat.
I've seen so much like amazing creativity with doulas and birth workers who are like, this is, they see different ways that we can make doula care more accessible. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's a couple of programs that, help with the funding as well. And I love it, because it's important that we recognize that, the support people, especially those that have made this our profession, we also need to be supported, and we need, the funding. So we don't want to take away from that, but also it's so incredibly important that these mamas get the care and the attention that they need. And so it's finding that balance. And I do think that we have done an amazing job as a society, as a society of doulas, finding creative ways to make that happen. And I love watching it grow, and, hopefully being a part of it growing. It's wonderful to watch.
Yeah.
Well, I really am so incredibly grateful to you ladies for coming on here and, talking with me and sharing all of this. Sorry, I have someone who decided to join in. But that's all of the topics that I had written down. Did you guys have anything that you wanted to speak on or talk about before we wrap it up?
I really, go ahead.
No, I feel like we've been in a good process here. So like, you go ahead. It's been working out.
I'd really like to see more nonprofit organizations helping moms that can't afford the care. And that's talking postpartum and birth doulas. It shouldn't just be the people that have extra money, and that shouldn't be the case. I feel that every single woman should have that support available to them. And I know it's growing. It's not growing fast enough for me.
I know.
I think we can all agree on that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I feel like, in DFW, there's a Dallas-based nonprofit called Delighted to Doula, and they like are solely focused on postpartum support that's more affordable. And there's some good things coming up, but yeah, not fast enough. And but I feel like it's on a good track.
Hmm.
Because I know the people who are experiencing birth trauma, I think that birth trauma can happen to anybody. No one is, immune to it. Um,
Hmm.
but it's happening disproportionately in, like low income communities. Um,
Correct.
and, those are the people who can't afford to have someone there every day, a postpartum doula there every day, but they're the people who often need it the most. I think that there's some good stuff happening, but I'm looking forward to seeing in the coming years what else comes up. I guess on a final note, I would say that if you have experienced birth trauma, that you're not alone at all. Um, it's something that happens to a lot of people. Like I said, no one's immune to it. So, you might start talking about it with your friends and find out, this friend also has birth trauma and that friend also has birth trauma. Um,
Hmm.
and it's makes me sad to say that because I wish there was less of it. But there are people who are in the background working on lessening the occurrences, and so I'm hoping that over the next few years, this whole I don't know. I think that the birth worker community is doing such a great job of preventing it, and then when it does
Hmm.
happen, helping to heal it
Advocate.
or process it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Um, the sitting moon, we do have big plans for the future, but it's baby steps to get there. But you're right, it's not moving fast enough. It does unfortunately take a lot of time to get programs up and running that can reach moms, and it's there's also an
Absolutely.
education component of getting the funding needed in the areas where it's needed. And so, I
Hmm.
always encourage, people who have a platform to speak up and to educate and to shed light on, the programs that are out there, because unfortunately, it is a money game. It is a funding game.
Hmm.
You can't reach people if you can't get people in that area. And so it's definitely, a process, but like you have both said, it is a process that is happening, just a little on the slow side. So I'm excited to see where it goes. But thank you both so much for coming on here and being a part of this. I can't wait to have more conversations like this in the future. And yeah, just thank you again.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank you
so
for
much for
inviting
having
me.
us.
Awesome. Well, I will talk with both of you soon.
All
Okay,
right, sounds
great.
good.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Our mission at the Sitting Moon is to raise awareness, remove stigmas, and reduce barriers, thereby contributing to a healthier mother, family, and society. Please, if you're having any problems, we encourage you to speak up, get help. Remember, you are not alone.